Let us pray. O God, our help in ages past, our hope for years to come. Almighty and everlasting God, we thank you for giving us another day, a special day. Once again, we begin with prayer to acknowledge our dependence on you as our Creator, Redeemer, and Sustainer. Bless our President and the citizens of our land. Give us perseverance to press on through discouragement and gratitude to acknowledge you in any success. For you have been the Lord's people's guide for past 300 years, and with you still on the people's side, we have no doubts or fears. We give special thanks that we live in a nation where a peaceful readjustment of government is expected and affirmed through free elections. We ask your blessings on those newly elected and re-elected to this chamber. Bless them and their families as well as those who support and challenge them. May they fulfill and understand the trust that has been given to them to represent and serve your people. Assist us all this day and every day through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Let's say the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those that trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
This House is in session.
Announcements by Your Honor.
I am in receipt of a message from Her Excellency I am in receipt of a letter from the House of Assembly of the Virgin Islands, 7th of February 2022. Honourable Arthur E. Holder, BLP Speaker, House of Assembly. Dear Honourable Holder, congratulations. I am delighted to convey to you on my behalf and that of the House of Assembly of the Virgin Islands our collective congratulations on your re-election as Speaker of the House of Assembly following the elections of the Barbados Labour Party on the 19th of January 2022. We in the Virgin Islands House of Assembly stand ready to assist and support you in your role as Speaker if and when the need arises. I know you will uphold the principles of parliamentary democracy in Barbados, and I look forward to a close working relationship. Sincerely, Honourable Julian Willock, MHA, Speaker of the House of Assembly.
Messages from Her Excellency the President.
I am in receipt of a message from Her Excellency the President to the Honourable the House of Assembly. Her Excellency the President hereby informs the Honourable the House of Assembly of the following. Section 60, subsection 1 of the Constitution provides that each session of Parliament shall be held at such place and commence at such time as the President may appoint. Her Excellency hereby informs the Honourable the House of Assembly that by proclamation dated the 8th day of February 2022, that Her Excellency has appointed the Worthing Corporate Centre, Worthing, Christchurch, as the place at which the continued session of Parliament shall be held at 10 a.m. in the morning on Tuesday, 8th day of February 2022, as the time at which the said session shall commence. Signed, the President. This is accompanied by the proclamation by Her Excellency the Most Honourable Dame Sandra Prunella Mason, Freedom of Barbados, Dame Grand Cross of the Most Distinguished Order of St. Michael and St. George, Dame of St. Andrew, Queen's Counsel, Doctor of Laws, President of Barbados. A proclamation. Whereas it is provided by Section 60, subsection 1 of the Constitution, that each session of Parliament shall be held at such place and commence at such time as the President may appoint. And whereas by proclamation dated the 3rd day of February 2022, the President appointed the Lord Erskine Sandifer Centre, Toomay St. Michael, as the place at which a session of Parliament shall be held at 10:00 hours in the morning. And whereas it is expedient to continue the session of Parliament at the Worthing Corporate Centre, Worthing, Christchurch, with effect from the 8th day of February 2022. Now, therefore, by virtue and in exercise of the power and authority vested in me, I, the Most Honourable Dame Sandra Prunella Mason, Freedom of Barbados, Dame Grand Cross of the Most Distinguished Order of St. Michael and St. George, Dame of St. Andrew, Queen's Counsel, Doctor of Laws, President of Barbados, do hereby appoint the Worthing Corporate Centre, Worthing, Christchurch, as the place at which the session of Parliament shall be held, and 10:00 hours in the morning as the time at which the said session shall commence. Given under my hand and the public seal of Barbados, this 8th day of February 2022.
Petitions. Papers.
Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm commanded to lay loan contract number 5439 OCBA between the Government of Barbados and the Inter-American Development Bank Sustainable Development Policy Program 2. I'm also commanded to lay the Hotels and Resorts Limited Annual Report for April 1st, 2020 to March 31st, 2021.
Government notices. Private members' business. Notices of questions. Report from select committees. First reading of bills. Statements by ministers. Congratulatory and/or obituary speeches. Personal explanations. Motion for leave of absence. Or replies to questions. Notice of motions for the adjournment of the House on matters of urgent public importance. Orders of the day.
Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the suspension of Standing Orders 6, 16, 18, 20, 42, subsection 5, 43, and 44 for the remainder of the day's sitting.
Seconder, please. The question is that the aforementioned standing orders be suspended for the remainder of the day's sitting. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. The aforementioned standing orders are hereby suspended for the remainder of the day's sitting. Government business is now the order of the day.
Order number one, in the name of the Honourable Attorney General, to move the second reading of the Constitution Amendment Bill 2022.
Honorable member for St. Joseph.
Mr. Speaker, it is, of course, convention that in one's first address at the sitting after Parliament that we take a moment to thank all of those individuals who reposed their confidence in you in the preceding election. And I wouldn't want to stray too far from that convention, Mr. Speaker. It was a brisk election. And I am honored, still honored by the fact that the members of the constituency of St. Joseph, which for the record and for those who don't remember, includes part of St. Andrew, part of St. Thomas, a little piece of St. George, and part of St. John, and of course all of St. Joseph. And I am honored to be back in this chamber. And I wish at the outset to thank my constituents for continuing to have the confidence in me that they've shown. I discovered from a journalist who interviewed me during the elections that as of the election of 2018, I became the longest serving member for St. Joseph since we moved away from double membership constituencies. No. And it took me aback, but I said to that journalist, I do not wish to be distinguished by any record that is marked by how long I've been in Parliament or how many times I've represented the constituency. Not at all. If there's to be any distinction from my service, sir, it is that I've done a good job as the representative. Mr. Speaker, I pledge to continue to serve the people of St. Joseph in this chamber and to carry out diligently my responsibilities as MP, but also to serve you, sir, and the Parliament of this chamber, having been once more given the honor of being the Attorney General of Barbados. It is perhaps fitting then, sir, that the first act of this new Parliament would be that we move an amendment to the Constitution. In the last few weeks, we've heard a lot said about democracy. I think, sir, that people have spoken very glibly about democracy without recognizing that in order for a democracy to take place and to have its full meaning, that sometimes we have to be prepared to change things. There's that old saying, the more things change, the more things remain the same. But there's also the old saying, sir, that if you don't change, you will become extinct like a dinosaur. We as a government have never looked at the matter of amending our Constitution lightly. Sometimes those amendments are consequential to other legislative changes that are required. Other times they are required as a result of the court action. You will remember, Mr. Speaker, the case of Nerve, which was decided by the Caribbean Court of Justice just after we came to government in 2018, which said that the mandatory death penalty was unconstitutional. And we had to come, sir, and amend the Constitution in a response to that judicial dictate. There have been times, sir, when we've had to amend the Constitution for other reasons. Today, we come, Mr. Speaker, not to tinker with the Constitution. The concept of tinkering with the Constitution suggests making changes to the Constitution in a whimsical and trifling way. Not at all on this instance, or not at all in any instance that I've been in this chamber. On average, I suppose the Constitution gets amended 2 or 3 times during the course of a sitting. In my research, sir, I discovered that the United States Constitution, in its over 200 years of history, has only been amended 27 times. But the call for amendments to the U.S. Constitution have numbered into the hundreds of thousands. But they have a unique constitution and a unique state structure which makes it very difficult to amend the Constitution, and perhaps that is a good thing. Our Constitution can only be amended, Mr. Speaker, with a 2/3 majority in the lower house and in the upper house. That is our restriction to make sure that the Constitution is not trifled with or not tinkered with. But at all times we have to remember, Mr. Speaker, that a constitution is a living document. It must always change to reflect the needs of our society from time to time. And sometimes those changes are the result of a wholesale, a large-scale review of the Constitution, such as the one that we have promised and remain committed to. And the country will hear about that more in the very, very near future as we put the arrangements for a new commission to examine our Constitution. But there are also times, Mr. Speaker, when situations arise and we have a choice. We can either treat our Constitution as being frozen, or we can treat ourselves as being frozen and refuse to deal with it. The first part of this amendment, Mr. Speaker, has to do with the lowering of the age of eligibility for both the House of Assembly and the Senate from its current 21 years to 18. Now, we allow our citizens, we allow Barbadians to vote at 18. You can join the army, the police. You can go to work and have a family and do all kinds of things at 18. Lord knows some of us get shipped off to university at 18 and go and live in strange lands. You can buy and consume as much alcohol as you like at 18. A whole set of things we allow our citizens to do at 18, some by convention, some by statute. But somehow this anachronism of insisting that you must be 21 in order to serve the people has persisted. You can get married at 18 and raise a family, sir. I do not know of any more difficult or demanding responsibility than being a parent. Somebody else is anxious to speak in this debate. Restrain him. So you can be a parent and raise a family at 18, but somehow or another you need another 3 years before you're considered to be mature enough to take on the responsibility of representation. This is not a new debate, Mr. Speaker. I must tell you that. My son is 21. I don't even like him to drive my car. So I would probably not consider him to be eligible for a Senate appointment. But the serious issue is this: what is the appropriate age? Mr. Speaker, this is not a new debate. The Henry Ford Commission, sir, on the Constitution, which the Ford Commission is now many decades old, And that commission was called on to consider what the appropriate age should be for the composition of the Senate. And the commission, in its deliberations, not just the Senate and the House of Assembly, it was suggested that the age for the Senate shouldn't be 21 at all. It was suggested that it should be 25. The Ford Commission, but that 18 should be the age for the House of Assembly. I don't know what triggered or what motivated that distinction. 25 for the House of Assembly, 25 for the Senate and 18 for the House of Assembly. Perhaps, sir, it had to do with the anachronistic thinking out of England where their upper house is constituted by the lords, people who are greybeards and eminent, a little long in the tooth perhaps sometimes. And therefore it was felt that because in a sense we mimic that we should have an older age. Happily, that particular recommendation was not followed. But what is interesting, sir, and even though the commission itself in its recommendation says that the majority of the committee recommends that section 37 and 43 of the Constitution be amended to provide qualifying ages of 25 and 18 respectively for membership of the Senate and the House of Assembly, Commissioner Melanie Newton had a dissenting view. And I want to share that dissenting view with you. It is short, and with your permission, sir, I will read her comments. On the matter of the age of the Senate, this is what she said. This is to be found at page 118 of the report of the Constitution Review Commission. And I quote, "I strongly disagree with the recommendation that the age qualification for the Senate should be 25 years. This is an unnecessary and frankly undemocratic recommendation not called for by past experience of the functioning of the Senate. There was no evidence brought before the Commission that political representation in Barbados and the perceived respectability of the position of a senator has been compromised by the current practice of allowing 21-year-olds to sit in the Senate. Also, there's nothing particularly magical about the age of 25. Throughout history, there have been younger people than that who have been elected to lead countries. For example, Pitt the Younger was 20 when he entered Parliament, and 23 when he became Prime Minister. And there's currently a mayor in Dominica who is under that age." Ms. Newton continues, "If one can vote at 18 and sit in the House of Assembly at 18, one should be able to sit in the Senate at 18. If this is felt by persons older than myself to be too young, then at the very least the minimum age for appointment to the Senate should remain at 21. Melanie Newton was the youngest person on that commission. And it was felt that a young person should be on the commission to canvass and represent the views and interests of a younger and emerging generation of Barbadians. And they can tell from her sentiment that she in fact felt that the qualification age for the Senate should also be 18, and that there would be no justification for taking it to 25 and hardly any justification for keeping it at 21. Sir, the debate is not new. But there is something inconsistent about a country that says that at 18 you have the necessary intellectual depth and personal maturity to be able to select Dale Marshall as your representative, but you cannot consider being a representative yourself. There's something inconsistent about that argument. There's something inconsistent about the argument that says you can go and work, you can make decisions about your life, but somehow you don't have the intellectual girth, perhaps, if that's a good term, to be able to represent people. I believe, Mr. Speaker, that there's really no issue on this subject at this time. I don't think there's any Barbadian who would seriously want to argue now that we should, in fact, increase the age of Senate qualification to 25, or that there's any good reason for not lowering it. I hope, Mr. Speaker, that all of Barbados will identify with this very logical approach. And yes, there are some who will have reservations about the maturity of 18-year-olds. There are some. But equally, though, there are many of us who recognize 18-year-olds of great intellect and promise, and who demonstrate maturity way beyond their age. And all we're saying is that when those demons begin to show promise at 18, then there's absolutely no reason why the opportunity should not be made available to them, sir, to serve in those high offices. I know there was a time when people felt that individuals in the 30s weren't worth much. If you look at the average age of this parliament, Mr. Speaker, you will probably figure hovering around 50. But at the time when Sir Henry Ford,
I think some people wanted, I think some
they
people are
want
taking
to
the
say
back
that
with
it's lower
that.
than 50. Well, 45 then. But I believe, sir, that at the time when Sir Henry Ford and the Right Excellent Arabara went to England to negotiate the independence of their country, they were younger than most of the parliamentarians in this chamber. In this chamber. But nobody would want to say that for some reason they didn't have the intellectual maturity of people in their 60s. So the point is, sir, that when we choose these ages, we choose it fairly arbitrarily. Choose it fairly arbitrarily, sir. The current Prime Minister, I believe she was first elected to Parliament when she was 29 and had a cabinet portfolio in which she served with great distinction at that age. So perhaps I'm flogging a horse that is in the throes of death. 18 is the age of majority. In countries across the world, you can go off and fight in wars and sacrifice your life at 18. The time has come, sir, when we need to recognize that promising individuals, having achieved the age of majority, should not have an artificial ceiling placed above their heads that would determine how far they could go at the age of 18. And the Prime Minister has indicated that she proposes to appoint a young man to the Senate. And some may argue that this amendment is triggered by that. I would say that that is the occasion for the amendment, because this is an amendment, sir, the time for which has undeniably come. For those who participate and who look forward to participating in the in-depth discussion on a new Barbados Constitution, I hope, sir, that they will see this only as a step in the right direction and not even go into those discussions with any question of what is the appropriate age. Mr. Speaker, that is the first part of this amendment to the Constitution. The lowering of the age for eligibility for the Senate and the lowering of the age for eligibility in the House of Assembly. The second part of this amendment is perhaps the part that has caused the greatest level of discussion. I began, sir, by talking about democracy. And democracy is something that we've always jealously guarded, but somehow or another, there's a reluctance to deepen it. To deepening it. We see democracy as voting in an election. We see it within the confines or within the four walls of our Constitution. But yet still the very people who want to rail on social media about the democracy and so on, when an opportunity comes for them to support the deepening of that democracy, they jump back. There's a reluctance to embrace it. Now, Mr. Speaker, for us, I almost said, sir, for us on this side. For us, Mr. Speaker, this is an opportunity to deepen democracy in Barbados. And by this, Mr. Speaker, I'm referring to the arrangements that we are seeking to put in place to reflect a modern thinking of opposition. This party has once again been fortunate enough to win all 30 seats. Under the Constitution, Mr. Speaker, the President chooses, as leader of the opposition, an individual in the House of Assembly whom she considers would have the majority support of the opposing side. Now, as Parliament has historically been divided, you have the government that wins, you have the opposition that loses, and along party lines. And that analysis is very easy. The government produces the Prime Minister, and those people on the other side, those individuals on the other side of the chamber, the opposition, they will throw a leader. And the appointments are made on that basis. At the time when our Constitution was framed, Mr. Speaker, there's no doubt in my mind that those framers of the Constitution contemplated a situation where there might not be a leader of the opposition. I would imagine, though, that they thought it was fanciful thinking. In the hurly-burly hustle and bustle and the tussle of politics in those days, I don't think anybody would have conceived at that time of there actually not being an opposition seat in the lower house. The Constitution contemplated it, but did not go far enough. But that's all right. It was all right then, because I can't imagine that Errol Barrow in any discussion, the right Senator Barrow in any discussion with Tom Adams would even consider that somebody from either party would not be present in the chamber. And certainly, sir, in recent decades, we came fairly close. We had a 26-3 and a 28-2. But even then, we came close to the edge, but not quite over it. And on the last occasion, we were starting a parliament, Mr. Speaker. The Barbados Labour Party won all 30 seats. And we began to ask ourselves the question, what do we do about our democracy and deepening that democracy? What do we do in relation to those things that the opposition, leader of the opposition, would ordinarily have had to attend to in that office? But before that became a reality, one member decided he was going to form the opposition, and therefore, in a sense, we dodged that bullet. We are in the same place again. We are in the same place again. And we've had to ask ourselves that burning question: are the constitutional arrangements that we have in place appropriate for a modern democracy? Mr. Speaker, we have some new members of this chamber, and we have some older ones. And you know, Mr. Speaker, I remember there was a time when a parliamentarian was viewed with great awe. As a young man, I certainly viewed all parliamentarians with great awe. I looked up to parliamentarians. I trusted the parliamentarians. There was a time, Mr. Speaker, when parliamentarians spoke, people revered you and accepted your opinion almost unquestioningly. But we have a country now that is made up of individuals who are, if you take degrees, they got more degrees than probably any of the people in here. They are wider read than many of the people in here. I have canvassed young people and old people, and they engage you in a way that sometimes cause you to ask yourself whether they should be the MP and not you. The fact is, Mr. Speaker, that we have a country that happily is made up of very intelligent, well-read Barbadians. And by well-read, I don't necessarily mean social media, though that's not always a bad thing. And those Barbadians understand in real ways a lot more about democracy than perhaps Barbadians of 30 and 40 and 50 years ago. And as a parliament, as a new executive, we cannot treat today's generations of Barbadians in the way in which we would have treated them 30, 40 years ago, because they demand more of us as leaders. Now, we don't have a constitutional concept of proportionality in terms of votes at the elections. We have always maintained the Westminster system of first past the post. Other constitutions in the region have proportionality, proportional representation. We don't have it. Some will argue for it, some will argue against it. But the point is, sir, that we have to find a way to give those individuals who did not win at the polls a voice in our affairs. And it isn't just the political class that is saying this. It is the youngsters out there who are challenging us and asking the question, you mean you all are the government again? Who is there to oppose? My son has asked me that question. I told him, if you want me to keep supporting you, don't ask me that kind of questions anymore. I could tell him that. But the fact is that there are a lot of Barbadians who rightly are asking those questions. How is there a balance being presented? How are we preserving that balance? And, you know, some will say the Fourth Estate will do it. The press will be the opposition. I have no doubt that there are members of this chamber who will speak stridently if there are matters that they have serious reservations about. And then, of course, there's always social media. But we feel, Mr. Speaker, that it's important that at this time we take some steps to enshrine the deepening of our democracy. Now, there are those who say we are tinkering with the Constitution and that we should leave such matters until we get to the review and the consideration of a new Barbados Constitution. But, Mr. Speaker, what happens until then? What happens until then? We have proposed, sir, that even though the President has a discretion that is settled in the Constitution, that we should put in place certain guidance. In relation to the appointment of independent senators, Mr. Speaker, there's guidance in the Constitution that says that those independent senators, and they're not called independent senators in the Constitution. Nowhere would you see that. Independent senators is what we call them. The Constitution just says that the President shall appoint 7 senators in her own discretion, and they should be drawn from various areas. They should be drawn from the business community, the religious community, labor, and so on. But in relation to the exercise of of her discretion for the appointment of the 2 senators where there is no leader of the opposition, there's no guidance given. So because the president is able to appoint those 2 senators in her own discretion, she, the president, can choose anybody. She can choose, the president can choose the head of the Salvation Army, probably a good thing. Head of the Red Cross, probably a good thing too. Head of the Boy Scouts. The president can exercise that discretion in any way that she deems appropriate. And all that we are saying is that for the purposes of deepening our democracy, we should stipulate that that should be governed by some political nuances. And that's what we are trying to provide for in this context. Now, the opposition Democratic Labour Party has said we don't have the power to make any offer. Let me make it clear, we are not offering anything. But as the government, we have the power, we have the capacity to structure our constitutional arrangements in such a place that what we are thinking of could be offered. And that's all that we're doing. We are seeking to amend the Constitution to provide, Mr. Speaker, that in any instance where either the President or the Prime Minister or anybody else has a duty in the Constitution to consult or to get advice from the leader of the opposition, where there is none, where there is no leader of the opposition, you have a duty then to go to the opposing party with the highest number of votes. Now, if the Democratic Labour Party opposition doesn't want it, I'm sure that there are a few other political parties out there who would say, me. If you don't want them, I would take them. I'm sure they would. I'm sure they would. But what is important, sir, is more the concept than the action. Because in addition to the matter of appointing senators, the leader of the opposition also has a role to play in the appointment of judges and the appointment of various service commissions. The opposition has the right and, in fact, duty to appoint to the Electoral and Boundaries Commission a deputy chair and, I believe, 2 other members. Now, as the law stands, because there is no leader of the opposition, the Prime Minister has the right to nominate everybody. Plain and simple. Nobody could challenge, nobody could quarrel with it. Where there is no leader of the opposition, if the Prime Minister has to consult or to take advice from the leader of the opposition, it is to be ignored. She can do it in her own discretion. Now, the truth is, I'm sure that some of our colleagues across the region will be kicking us saying, we're foolish. When I got the power to do that and you can go and give it. But it's about protecting our democracy. And time after time, sir, since we have come to government, we as an administration have taken decisions which curtail our powers. In relation to the appointment of judges, you know, sir, there was a time when judges were just appointed. The members of the bar would hear rumors, and then they would hear so-and-so as a judge. We moved away from that. We curtailed a power that many people consider to be inviolate by opening up the matter of judicial appointments, making it public, making it transparent. Something that was a major issue back when the Constitution was amended, I think it was in 1974. We've changed all that process. And now our Prime Minister is constrained by the recommendations of the Judicial Appointments Committee. In relation to the appointment of the President, we've curtailed the powers that we've traditionally had. And on this occasion, we're curtailing the powers again. We went through an entire campaign, sir, hearing how despotic our Prime Minister was, and that our democracy was being threatened. How is democracy threatened when we put more power in the hands of the people and in the hands of those who oppose us? But, Mr. Speaker, let me make it clear that the amendment as it is constituted is what we call normative. It doesn't, people who are expecting to see a reference to senators doesn't appear in this section at all. We are replacing the existing section 75, and this section 75 opens with the words, where there is no leader of the opposition and the Constitution provides that the President, the Prime Minister, or any other person shall act in accordance with the advice of the leader of the opposition. The reference to the leader of the opposition shall be read in reference to the opposing political party which obtained the highest number of votes in the general election following the dissolution of Parliament. Now, sir, let me say that for those people who are thinking real fast, they say, well, you know something, it is possible to have the opposing party actually get more votes than the government in a first-past-the-post system. But, sir, we go on to, we take the care to say that opposing party means the members of a political party which contested the election but who do not form the government. Now, Mr. Speaker, there have been a number of commentators, and I'm going to wind up now. There have been a number of commentators who have asked questions like, why are there no explanatory notes? Well, all statutes don't have explanatory notes. Weighty and complicated statutes will have explanatory notes, so the new members of this chamber will want to bear that in mind. But other statutes will not have explanatory notes. The question has been asked, does this only apply immediately after a general election or wherever there's a vacancy? The statute is clear. The statute is where there's no leader of the opposition. So at any time where there's no leader of the opposition and there's a duty to consult, it addresses the issue. Now, I don't want to poo-poo anybody's comments. You know, they say that any democracy thrives on dissent. And along the way, a lot of the things, some of the things that we've done, people have challenged. Others, some of those people have been brave enough to step out and go to the court. Our restructuring, sorry, it isn't well known, but our restructuring program, our BERT program, was challenged in the High Court. It was argued that we were acting unconstitutionally. We prevailed on that occasion, sir. A case has brought us again in relation to our COVID directives, saying our COVID directives were an infringement of people's fundamental rights, and on and on and on and on, and we were acting unconstitutionally. We prevailed on that occasion as well. We prevailed when a challenge was brought against the government, arguing that the last leader of the opposition could not lawfully have been appointed leader of the opposition. We prevailed then too. Most recently, Mr. Speaker, there was a challenge in the days before the election saying that the election must not be allowed to continue because we had too many people in isolation. You know, that was a big debate. We prevailed on that one as well. I don't see challenges like that, sir, as any disrespect to my office as Attorney General, as the Chief Legal Advisor of government. And I don't gloat when we're victorious. Every democracy must respect the right of citizens to be critical and to offer a different analysis. Plain and simple. Plain and simple. And on every occasion when those different analyses are offered, I as AG will certainly consider them. In instances, Mr. Speaker, where I harbor some doubts of my own, I take the liberty of reaching out to other individuals just to hear, but what are your thoughts on this? That is how critical thinking works, and those things strengthen our democracy. So for those people who are critical of what we're doing on this occasion, by all means, continue to criticize. We will always act with the best of advice, using our best judgment, and in the best interests of Barbadians. Mr. Speaker, I commend this particular suite of amendments to the Constitution. I hope that we will not be discussing a Constitution in terms of amendments anytime soon, because I expect that in the shortest possible time, we will be able to present to the people of Barbados a new constitution in this chamber. I hope, and I encourage all Barbadians, when that time comes, to speak, to participate, to come out and to express your views. Opposing views must always be allowed to contend, because it is those opposing views that help to sharpen our own thinking and our own analysis. Mr. Speaker, these amendments will serve an important role. In many respects, sir, it covers a lacuna that the early framers of the Constitution didn't even go into. And I think, sir, that these arrangements are reasonable. And for those who are wondering, in a situation where the opposing party, the principal opposing party, the one with the highest votes, where the opposing party, sir, the one with the highest votes, says, I ain't want it, I'm not involved in that, the constitutional arrangements are that the second next highest scoring party will be the one consulted, and if that doesn't work, the third highest scoring party. And when you've gone down the line and there are no more parties, sir, then you will simply, the president and the prime minister would exercise their own discretion. Now, I do not know what anybody could find to be objectionable about that. I can't imagine. We are willing to give an opportunity for an opposition. They can't be in the House because the House is the place where the people's choices are found, but they have an opportunity to be in the Senate. And I would think that all right-thinking people of a political bent would recognize the importance of this kind of constitutional guarantee. Mr. Speaker, as I said, I hope we don't have to come back and amend the Constitution, but if we have to, on any occasion, we will, because it is a document that is not frozen in time, and any parliament that is reluctant to make changes when changes are required is a parliament, sir, that itself is sowing the seeds of its own demise and destruction. I'm obliged to. I beg to move that this bill be read a second time.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the suspension of the House for 5 minutes until 11:20.
The question is that this honorable chamber be suspended for 5 minutes. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. This honorable chamber stands suspended for 5 minutes.